if you're a first-time founder and you don't come from a tremendous amount of money, like I definitely did not, uh, like a smaller first exit is like a great outcome, especially if it's enough money for you to take a big swing on the next one. Like no one's ever going to think that you failed. Everyone's going to be like, "Great job. You like learned a lot, you built a great foundation, and like you're really well funded the next time."
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Founders in Arms podcast with me, Imad Akhund. Today, we do not have Raj. He had to go to China, but we have a guest, Rahul Sidhu. He's the co founder and CEO of Aerodome, which was recently acquired for a reported $300 million by Flock Safety in October 2024. Welcome to the show, Rahul.
Thanks for having me, man.
You have a crazy story, right? Like, this was a 2-year-old startup that was acquired. Like, when did you start the company?
I was about 17 months old. It was my first company. The last one that I built that was acquired, it took about 7 years to get to that outcome. This is 17 months, and we certainly weren't expecting or aiming for it. It was just a right timing, right partner, type situation.
So this is a cool story. I guess, like, tell me, how you got to kind of the Aerodome idea and building this and why you thought it was important.
Yeah, look, my background's in public safety. I've worked as a police officer, paramedic, a manned aircraft pilot. I'm still a reserve police officer in Southern California. And I was, the CEO of my last company, Spider Tech, before Aerodome, when as a reserve officer, I was acting as like an air support commander for my agency in March of 2020 when COVID happened.
Hmm.
And a friend of mine, hit me up. He was the captain at Chula Vista PD. His name's Fritz Reber. And he invented this concept. He's like, look, I'm just going to start flying drones directly to police or any 911 call from the rooftop of our police department. See if I can like act like a mini helicopter, just
Oh, cool.
provide air support for the first responders, the police and firefighters, typically before they even get on scene. And he was the only one doing it. He calls me. He's like, you should try this. And so because of COVID, we had maybe 40% of a reduction in officers that could respond to calls and firefighters that could respond to calls because if you had the sniffles, like you couldn't come to work.
Mm.
And so we had to find a way to do more with less. So I just was like, hey, I'm going to stand up on the roof and do exactly this. And, I had somebody stand up on the roof and I was flying the drone and I would start going to calls. The idea was originally to triage them. We had so many calls for service. I had to decide what the officer would go to and not go to based on what I saw on scene. So, for example, a classic COVID call. Hey, there's a kid skateboarding in a park. He's not allowed to be there. I'm going to look at it and be like, this kid's not hurting anybody. Like, we're not going to send an officer to that call because if I send an officer to that call, I can't send him to the next call. The next call might be like a theft in progress or something.
Mm.
So that's what we were originally using it for. But by day 2, there was an attempted murder in the city, and the murder suspect was driving away. And I sent a drone and caught him before he got on the freeway with the drone, and then was able to like direct units to safely apprehend the suspect. And immediately I was like, oh, this is the future. Being able to use drones to be able to respond to calls for service like this is the future of all public safety air support. And I mean, over the next couple of weeks, I had, drone go to a fire call and help with evacuation, drone go to a traffic collision and determine like, hey, these people are, safely exchanging information. We don't need to send lights and sirens officers and firefighters who might get into another collision on the way. Like little things like that I'm like, oh, there's ROI there. There's ROI there that I was immediately decided this has to become a business.
I guess one thing cool about you, and I was a small investor in the company, is you have this like police background, and you really deeply kind of understand and empathize with people kind of doing this duty. How did you even get into it? Like, I feel like that's a pretty unusual background, especially for a founder.
Yeah, look, I'm a big fan generally of like founder market fit as I write checks. I like try to write them for founders who like have that market fit already. So, for the same reason, I think that for my like background was really built. I've always had like two paths in my life as even as a kid. I was always into tech, like and building little businesses. And at the same time, I was always like somebody who wanted to be what we call downrange, which is like I wanted to be in the mix. I wanted to be a firefighter, a paramedic, a police officer, or I want to join the military. I wanted to have like life experience where I could like actually go out there, make life and death decisions, make an impact, like deal with that level of stress, that level of
Like, because you
adrenaline.
watch like superhero movies?
Yeah,
Like, what gave you that
yeah,
mindset?
exactly. Like you watch movies as a kid, you're just like, man, I want to be that guy, and um, I didn't want to like go straight to a desk job and not have those life experiences.
Hmm.
And so like I when I became 18, I became an EMT, and then I became a paramedic, and then I studied emergency medicine in college, and I learned how to be like a flight medic, and then I got my pilot's license, and then I became a police officer, which is a whole different story, back in 2013 in Los Angeles, and I spent some time doing that before I'm like, oh, okay, there's problems here I can solve with tech, and then I left being a full time police officer to go start my first public safety tech company, which was then later acquired. But I came back as a reserve officer because I wanted to like still keep my boots on the ground and like still respond 911 calls and keep that fresh. And that's still what I do today as a reserve officer. Now on the tech side, I had my first little startup in high school that I paid or that I sold for a very small amount of money to pay my way through college. So like I always was somewhat oriented in that direction. And so it was inevitable that the marriage of public safety and tech, the two things that were important to me, that was like an inevitable outcome for me.
I guess one thing that's interesting is, there hasn't been that much innovation in public safety, right? So, if if this was like B2B SaaS or something, there would be like maybe someone else would have uh, done this idea before you got to it. Do you think there is a lot more opportunity? Do you feel like, hey, flock safety has done a bunch and there isn't that many, or you're like, oh my god, I see like hundreds of ideas in public safety and
Yeah,
tech?
I mean, look, I think first of all, you're 100% right that there's like public safety generally has been neglected for much longer than like the classic B2B SaaS market has been. Largely because like I remember when I was raising for my first public safety company 10 years ago, every VC like, I don't like GovTech. I don't like
Hmm.
government as a customer. I don't like that sales cycle. They're just like B2B SaaS. Like these are the metrics I'm used to.
But aren't
And
they right? Like the sales cycle is annoying,
yeah,
or
sales
like,
cycle and, these are the metrics I'm used to. This is what I'm seeing as success out there. And there'd be very few VCs that would break the mold and be like, "No, no, let's like cool, I get it. Like these are the metrics that most VCs are top, but I'm looking for what the next big thing is." And I'd have VCs that would go invest in GovTech and play around with it. So with there I was able to get a little bit of money back then, a few million bucks through a series of a couple rounds to prove out Spider Tech. By the time I started Aerodome in 2023, there was so much momentum for American dynamism, through like the folks in Andreessen. Shout out to DU and Catherine and like Michelle, Voles and the folks there. And there's so much momentum on like GovTech working. Flock Safety, actually, the company acquired us, being one of the indicators of like, no, you can sell to government and have a very fast venture-based, venture growing growth company with a large outcome at the end. Flock did that for police departments in a way that nobody else had. And there were other companies like Mark 43, et cetera, that showed some success for like venture outcomes in public safety that now it became something that was hot. And now all of a sudden, the same VCs that like 10 years ago when it was too early for them are like, I just want to find a public safety company and they're throwing money into it. So there's a lot of like capital now being infused. And I've written 3 checks, as a scout for CRV in the last 30 days on like meaningful public safety plays that just,
oh really?
yeah, like I didn't write checks for a while. Then all of a sudden it just, I've seen so many interesting companies in like the last, couple months that I was able to get in on it. So I think like now is a great time where people are seeing the public safety industry. There's a lot of capital involved, and there are a lot of founders that are trying to make it work. And now the industry itself, the customers are constantly trying to try new things. Like it is not a an environment where someone without a public safety background can't come in and make a difference. It felt like that 10 years ago, where like people were just like chiefs are risk averse. They didn't understand the power of their data. That they weren't on the cloud yet. It just wasn't as easy to do something then.
Oh, that's interesting. Uh, when you advise these founders and they're trying to make their first sale, like what's the advice? Is it like go to smaller police departments? Like what are like the 2 or 3 things you tell them?
I mean, it's I'd say like a lot of that Venn diagram of like public safety and the rest of the industry is the same in the sense that you're gonna try and understand a problem. You're gonna throw a couple things to the wall to see what sticks. Early product market fit with a handful of customers, and like, is this driving the ROI you were expecting? Like that's all the same. Um, in the public safety world, yeah, you want to find X amount of police chiefs that are willing to like give you a shot, and you're probably not going to make much money off them. Uh, in Spider Tech, like there was a chief, John Peters, who was a chief of police at Grover Beach Police Department, which is like an 18 officer police department in Central California,
Hmm.
who would just like met us at a conference and was like, I'm willing to try anything. Like really open minded chief, great guy, and was like, come by the police department. And we drove up 3 hours and went to this police department and we're like, hey, this is what we got. And he's like, cool. And we deployed it a couple weeks later. And
Oh, no way.
we never charged them for all the years that I was at Spider Tech, because I'm like, nope, they gave us a shot, they get it for free forever, as far as I'm concerned. And then we had, other agencies after that started paying for it.
How many like sub 50 officer police departments are there in the US?
Most of them
Most of them? Really?
over 10,000 or sub
Oh,
50.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where you start and you like prove it out and then you work your way kind of
I mean, it
upwards.
depends. Like, like the first two agencies we deployed at Spider Tech, one was 18 cops, Grover Beach, and the other one was Tucson Police in Arizona, which is like 800 police officers. And they were both willing to work with us. The larger
Hmm.
company, a larger agency, was going to prove ROI at a different scale, right? Like,
Yep.
can you go to a big agency and actually still have the same outcome? Because you might have technology that can work for like a 20 cop department, but doesn't work for a 200 or 2,000 cop department. And now your market's like really tough, you know?
Hmm.
So you have to be able to prove it. And public safety is not like a one size fits all operation, not just based on sizes, but based on like types of agencies. Like the county sheriff and the municipal police department have a different mission often. Obviously fire and police have different missions. So you have to like get an understanding of what that's going to look like for everybody. You won't know what your market size is until you do.
Yeah. What are trends that are playing out here? Obviously, you all building in the drone space, which, actually there hasn't been that many things that have actually worked in the drone space. You might be one of the few exits in that built like a startup in the drone space. There's obviously AI. That's a big trend that presumably has lots of applications in public safety. Like, what are you seeing in terms of like, here's the future. This is like what's playing out on the field.
So one thing that I don't think is unique to public safety is like every single industry is what is a combination of both AI and then robotics going to do for my industry.
Hmm.
On the AI side, like robotics side, I should start with drones. Like that's the first piece that
Yep.
we're seeing departments like widely adopt. And I think that'll be the main focus of like robotics in policing for next 5 years will be mostly aerial for large outcomes. And then AI is just a like chip away at workflows, right? Like uh, you know, uh, I've got a friend Daniel who you might know who started a company called Able Police. Shout out to them. Where he's growing Daniel on Twitter. In case you're probably already following
Oh,
him.
is that the Daniel?
That's yeah. But he's built some great tech. That's
That's funny that he has a serious company because he's not serious at all on Twitter.
but but it works for him. It works for him.
Yeah.
He's actually I think the funniest guy on Twitter.
Yeah,
Uh,
he's really
but,
funny.
but he's like very serious, very thoughtful, very smart guy with a very good company called Able Police, where their focus is like, hey, look, let's just automate the police report writing workflow to start. But there are plenty of opportunities in policing, just like there are with every other aspect of every other industry, where it's like pick a workflow and automate it, and or do it better than a human being can, or do it safer than a human being can.
Hmm.
And I expect in the next several years in policing, unlike just like everything else, we're going to see workflows get automated. We're going to see smaller companies get in and like pick a couple they get really good at. We're going to see larger companies uh start automating like a series of workflows at once by creating new operating systems and things like that that are going to be either AI enabled or even AI native in the way that they're built. We're going to see like a lot of technical infrastructure get rebuilt. So that's I think going to be something similar to everybody. But in policing, one problem that has existed is because of how little capital went into policing to constantly try to innovate over a period of several decades. Most of the tech was built by like legacy companies that didn't compete with each other at a very high speed, didn't have like an agile framework or how they're thinking about product development. So over like a series of decades, records management, like databases, these types of things are really outdated.
Hmm.
And
They're still going to filing cabinets?
in a lot of agencies, they still are.
Wow.
And the ones that aren't are using like basically a records management system, which is a glorified database. Decades ago, that was invented. Agencies have just been trying to add workflows to this thing that was not built for that purpose for 30 years. And so it's just like a monstrosity in most of these agencies where they have like a silo databases that don't talk to each other that like they put workflows on top of that weren't designed for it. So I think there's going to be a huge change in how agencies do what they're supposed to do by just taking all of the data and putting it in one place and then creating workflows from there. And I think that's going to be something we're going to see as a fundamental shift. Now, Flock obviously is very, very good at a handful of these things, but really good at sensors, which is another piece. Is like what data do you not have access to that you need to access to? And Flock, it's an automated license plate reading company. That's how it started. So we started with putting thousands and thousands of these like license plate reading cameras in intersections in America so that like if a Amber Alert drives through that intersection or a stolen car drives through that intersection, the police is immediately notified. Well, then Flock built, pan-tilt zoom cameras and gunshot detection sensors, and now flies drones. These are all effectively sensors that are
Yep.
in the community that are, creating like real-time outcomes. And I think that's going to be another big piece of what we're going to do is we're going to see more and more of that too.
Is it easy to go international with these things, or is the US like such a weird and specific ecosystem that it's hard to go sell somewhere else?
I mean, the concept of policing is generally the same everywhere you go, with differences on how the law is, applied, how aggressive the policing is, like what laws they enforce, and how crime is handled, etc. The criminal justice system might be a little bit different where you go, but the concept's the same. So the idea of like I need to go respond to an emergency and or solve a crime is going to be consistent internationally.
Hmm.
Culturally, it's a little bit different where you go. If you go to Dubai, how that police department's gonna want to buy things, it's a little bit more focused on like, I want the newest thing all the time, and it might just collect dust. Or if you go to Japan, where they're very efficient and they're always innovating, it's gonna feel a little different. And you go to some countries where it's like they don't even have the technical infrastructure. Not every police station even has internet. They're still using radios in a way that like we stopped using in the 80s. So you can't really go there with like AI and expect to have a huge difference when the infrastructure doesn't exist. And from a sales process, you generally need to trust local people at each country to like walk you through that relationship and that sales process and how things get done in that country. Because it might culturally be different, it might legally be different. Most of these countries need to have a local presence for all the tech they buy. So like it's a process for sure.
Yeah. Um, Walk me through your founder journey a little bit, especially around acquisitions. I guess you've done two of them. You know, any advice that you give founders on like, hey, they receive an acquisition offer, how should they think about it? How what should they do in that situation?
Yeah, I would start even like one step before that and say like I would never encourage founders to build a company with the idea that, like an exit in X amount of time is success. Because actually more often than not, like it's rare to have an outcome like ours. It's like more likely that like you exited because of, circumstances like didn't work the way you wanted to. And like, you're either running out of money or any of those things. Like I wouldn't aim for that outcome. Um, but that said, it's like when you decide like an exit's the right thing to do for the company,
Mm.
the first time we did it, we proactively looked for it. The second time we did it, it just happened. Proactively looking for it was a function of like uh making sure we had more than one offer. Like going out there, running a process, kind of like you would fundraising to find out like where the perfect home is. More than like, two offers is one is none.
Let me push back on one thing. I feel like I think once you've had your exit and you have some success, it's easy to say like, hey, don't try to chase an exit or whatever. But I remember as a first time entrepreneur, like, and I didn't come from like a wealthy background or anything, like that was kind of the aim, right? Like, I mean, you were like, hey, I want to sell this thing and that's going to make me rich. I mean, like, obviously you want to solve some problem as well, but that was like the end result that you expected. Like, I didn't initially think I was going to go IPO or something. So like I was chasing the exit. So, uh, when you say, hey, don't chase the exit, like, is that realistic? Like, that's what I feel like a lot of people who are first time founders, especially, are going to be thinking, like, what is Rahul talking about?
That's totally fair. And I should clarify, when I say exit, I specifically mean acquisition. And when I'm
Yeah.
referring to this, I'm actually not saying don't get an acquisition and be happy. Like that could be the perfect outcome for the business. What
Hmm.
I'm saying is like, don't focus on that as like the end goal, because what to create that outcome where you are rich and you're rich in the shortest period of time, often if all you do is focus on adding value, like creating value with your business, like you'll probably have that outcome. But if you focus on like trying to navigate the waters of like, how do I perfectly position this to have this company buy it? You end up having like not enough eggs in the basket with maybe not enough focus on adding value. And now you might not be able to get that done. So it's like, I completely agree with you. Like, especially in the first time, you just want the best financial outcome in the shortest period of time. So like, that's fine. But if you add value, I think you're more likely to have that outcome. It's
Yeah,
kind
I
of,
think that's a good way to put it. It's like happiness. Like you don't want to chase happiness. You want to chase meaning and other things, and happiness comes as a consequence.
yeah, exactly. That's a great analogy.
So in your first company, did you? I know you said you were like, hey, trying to like kind of make an exit happen. Did you have an initial offer first that made you think, hey, like I should go collect enough interest, or did you literally have nothing and you were like, okay, let me go try to sell this?
All I got was at the time cold inbounds. from like people who are like, "Ah, this company might be interested in buying." It's just bullshit that like as a first time founder, you
Yeah, you
don't
get
know.
excited about
That's kind of just bullshit.
it.
You're just like, "Ooh, someone wants to buy the company," and you take it really seriously. Um, but it was enough that I was like, all right, it's time to pull some threads. Like we actually had an acquisition fall through in early
Mhm.
2020 because of COVID. And then I had to like raise some emergency funding. Like it was a rocky road at the time. And then actually was able to focus purely on adding value for the business, which put me in a leveraged position where I could raise the next round where I had offers to be able to do that, or I could sell the business. And the decision to sell the business was mostly focused on like, I actually have less faith that the venture outcome is like reasonable in a period of time that I think is like going to be reasonable. We were 5 or 6 years in the business at the time. So that was number one. And then number two was just like, look, I actually think that the market dynamics right now with like COVID kind of on the upswing might be a great time to get a price that otherwise we might not get if these market dynamics don't hold for a while.
And how much had you raised at that point?
We'd raised $4.5 million. So not very much at
I
all.
often think like that's a really good point to consider an exit, and I think enough founders don't do it, especially actually, when you can raise a Series A. Like it was, you had some offers, it was COVID, like it was hot time, but like a small exit, like a sub $100 million exit, there's so many more companies that can do that, and often it is like very life changing for the founder in a way that like a much lower probability bigger exit like probably doesn't make that much more money for the founder and that much more of a life kind of change.
I think it's totally true. And like I like to kind of key in on what you're getting at here is like if you're a first time founder and you don't come from a tremendous amount of money, like I definitely did not. Uh, like a smaller first exit is like a great outcome, especially if it's enough money for you to take a big swing on the next one.
Yep.
And VCs, like, you're never gonna like, no one's ever gonna think that you failed. Everyone's gonna be like, great job. You like learned a lot, you built a great foundation, and like you're really well funded the next time. Like VCs, especially by your investors.
It is confusing though because investors don't really want you to take that
No,
exit,
they
right?
don't.
Like as in, yeah, I had this was a while ago, and I won't name the company, but they called me up and they were so excited. They were like, "Hey man, like we just got this great exit. Like it's gonna be like, 5x your money." And I was thinking to myself, like, I invested in like 30 companies that year, right? 5xing my money, it doesn't like do anything for me. But I was, obviously I have to go like found issues. I'm like, hey, congrats, like I'm so happy for you guys, etc. But like as an investor, it's just that like you really need 100x when you're like doing seed investments. Like that's how you make up for the fact that, you're doing so many. But yeah, so you don't get great advice from investors in that situation, in my opinion, because the incentives are not aligned.
Well, I think, yeah, you're not gonna get great advice from investors in the middle of it, like in the middle of the consideration if they're invested in you. But after you've done it and you go out to raise the next company and they
Oh yeah,
find
they'll
out like,
back the truck. Yeah.
yeah, they'll back it, but it's specifically based on the context of your acquisition. I really went out of my way to like make sure that I took care of all my investors in the last one. And it wasn't like I looked for the exits when everybody felt like you should have swung for the fences because that's potentially a red flag to a new investor. Is like, are you just going to sell it quick again because you like being, you're trying to like hit these get rich quick schemes? Like as long as they're like, no, you took a good swing, you landed it responsibly, and now you're taking a big swing. You're going to be in a really good position to start the next one, which is why Aerodome was such a big swing for us, and like why I felt, I had a good financial outcome where I'm like, look, I'm just going for the fences, and funny enough, it ended like exactly like you're saying about like a 17-month acquisition, which is like what I'm telling everybody, don't try to have that outcome. I
Yeah.
just focus on adding value. Be like, I'm gonna take a big swing, create as much value as I can, as fast as I can. And it ended up being that like the best thing for the business was to do this. And
Yeah.
it was, a sizable outcome for everybody. So generally investors were happy for what like was such an early stage exit, because of how good of an exit was, but also because I think uh, everything was very aligned with this company. Culturally, it lined up. Like that's the other part of doing an acquisition, like that you really have to be careful about, like being acquired by a company that's going to fit for you.
In my last company, I spent, I think, around 3 years trying to get acquired. And, this is the funny thing with like, if you go to like Google or Apple's corp dev department, right? They have literally people there who are paid to talk to you. And if you're doing like something even vaguely interested and related to them, they will like talk to you. And then, they'll have you come in and talk to the PMs because they're like, yeah, like that they feel like they're doing their job. And like, the PMs will like take notes and all this stuff, right? So it's fun for them, right? To like see the startup as, but you think as a founder, wow, I'm like making progress. Like I'm in acquisition talks with Google and Apple. And, we had all of these, but it was a complete waste of time. And like 3 years trying to get sold, nothing happened. And then basically we gave up on it and we were like, hey, let's just like stop trying to sell and make some progress on this kind of final pivot we were working on. And then as soon as we like stopped trying to make it happen and we actually hit like product market fit for this new thing we did, suddenly we had like 2 acquisition offers, and we basically like signed with one and we were in term sheet, and we had like 5 others while we were in term sheet. So like when it works, it really works, and it's like quite easy to get acquisition offers. But when you're trying to make it happen, it's super hard. And I started Mercury with this mindset that I'm never going to sell, and I think we've had like serious acquisition interest like every year. And I think actually if you're doing something with that mindset, where you're like trying to swing for the fences and do something big, and like you're just like, I'm not interested in the selling side of it, you're much more likely to actually get acquisition offers, which is
That's
like kind
exactly,
of
yeah, that's
ironic.
kinda, yeah, that's my earlier point is, like, focus on building value, like you're
Yeah,
describing. They'll come, and acquisition offers should just be considered as optionality for you. Like, it's just leverage, it's optionality. You can decide to do it when you want. You wanna have optionality, but it's like you're right, it's hard when you're a first-time founder and you don't come from money and someone shows up and goes, "I'll buy your business for 25 million, which will make you $1 million, a millionaire." And you're like, in the grand scheme of things, like that's not a lot of money if you're like, a late stage founder, and you're trying to swing for the fences. But like when you're feeling that, like that's how I felt the first time. I'm like, oh my God, I'll never have to worry about money again, theoretically. Like I could make that work. Yeah, that's how you feel.
do you think the first time founder could have done something like Aerodome? Like, is it that like these big ideas you just have to have like some experience and some like ability to raise capital and all of that before you swing for those fences, or do you think anyone could do them?
No, I think anyone can do them. I think like, of course, like your likelihood of being able to do maybe a better job with it is higher the more experience you have. Like that's just like any human thing. But I, Zuckerberg built Facebook, right? Like there are plenty of first time founders that are still running huge companies because they just stuck it out, knew what to do. Like there's a little luck along the way. There's a lot of like, intelligent decision making, a lot of hard work. It's not, you don't, you like learn from mistakes the second time around. You learn little tricks. You learn ways to make your process more efficient, and you probably have access to more capital. But you're not like a god.
Sure. I think it would have been hard to do Mercury as a first time founder, just because, I mean, I think if you were like an exec or something or you came from some background where you could raise money maybe, but you just needed to raise at least 5 million to do this idea. And at least in 2017, like raising 5 million without being a second time founder was almost impossible. Maybe it's easier now though,
Yeah, yeah, fair enough.
especially pre-launch. Um, I guess what's in the future for you? Obviously, you're working at Flock. Like, do you imagine you're going to do another startup? And like, what would it take to get you kind of back in the field?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm actually like very all in on Flock. One of the main reasons I did this acquisition is because I knew I'd like working with the people here. Like I like Garrett a lot. He's a CEO of Flock. He and I get along really well. And like 100% to his credit, he's very much like I'm going to keep you in founder mode. I want you to feel like a founder while you're here, even though it's not. This Flock wasn't the company I started, and I totally feel that way. So like that's scratching my itch. I get to go do the things that I would previously do with more support and more resources, and it's very exciting. And outside of that, Flock is just like in the perfect place in like history for something like this, where this industry is about to move towards more AI, more data usage, more increase in data used, a combination of robotics. And like these are all things Flock is very good at. So if I just had to tie my value to a stock price going up, like it's going to be here. So I feel very good about that. Now, you know, am I going to be here for 50 years? Like I can't say like I have no idea. But what I do know is I'm probably always going to want to start something eventually. Um, that's just like how founders are. And I think there's no shame in that. And I think every founder that acquires another founder feels the same way. There's zero shame in it. I just have no plans to do it anytime soon.
Yeah, that's cool that you found a home you're happy with. Let's talk about drones a little bit. I feel like people often say like FAA made it like really hard for drone innovation in the US. I don't know if they allow like out of sight licenses still. Maybe they still don't allow that. Yeah, what do you think is the future of drones and drone innovation in the US? Do you think it's held back or it's easier than people think?
Well, I think like where we were a few years ago versus where we are today is like they're different planets when it comes to regulations on this stuff. I do firmly believe that we overregulated to a point where we put our own drone tech back quite some time.
Hmm.
If you just think about regulations, like if the FAA is saying like you can't fly drones for any of these useful purposes, because we just don't feel like it's safe, but like, and definitely not incentivized to change that, which is how it has been historically. Then of course, like you're going to get less companies that are going to take big swings, which means less money in the space, which means less like fuel for innovation. While other countries are going, yeah, you can fly beyond visual line of sight. This seems safe enough. Let's try this. And those, there are companies in that space that are going to build. In fact, when I built, like, started with Aerodome, the original plan was to spin up this company and go to countries like Singapore and UAE and, build the tech there and make them customers so that I could build a positive P&L and prove out the safety case and build the technology over a few years with the idea that we'll eventually bring it back into the United States when the US was more ready. And then the FAA released a waiver, like basically changed the regulation um, at the last minute when I was thinking about building a company that then made it feasible to do it in the United States.
Oh, really? What is the waivers specifically for police use, or is it broader?
Yeah, well, the way they gave a police department in Texas, Pearland, Texas, a small agency out there, a waiver to fly their drones beyond visual line of sight, um, without needing a visual observer. And that was the
Mm.
first time that's ever happened for this use case. So I was like, "Oh, wow. I thought this would take years to get." And the first agency, like, it was like a crack in the case where, uh, the FAA showed willingness to do something. And the plan to how we were gonna get our version of that was, and we eventually did in, like, about 18 months or so, but our plan was like, "Oh, we can do that, but far more scalably for far cheaper from a technology standpoint, where we can do it for every agency in America." We did end up doing it. But if the FAA didn't crack that open, I wouldn't have even done this in the US. And, like,
Mm.
I think a lot of companies got started with the idea that I'm not gonna do it in America because America's not gonna let me do it. But now that's not the case. Now the FAA is opening up. There's plenty of waivers. We've gotten dozens and dozens of these waivers now. We're like, moving towards being able to fly more than one drone at a time. We're going to move towards autonomy around this.
But
And
just for public safety usage, or can you do deliveries? Like, is it
I think like
beyond?
even drone deliveries in the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of momentum there with waivers. We've seen waivers for like security and infrastructure inspections, like across the board. We're seeing them. Public safety
Oh,
was a
that's
beat.
exciting. I didn't realize that this had like changed that
No, it,
significantly.
it, it has definitely changed considerably in the last like 18 months specifically. Um, so we're seeing a lot of use cases. We're also seeing like the technology get better. There's a whole different argument to be had here where the American drone industry, where like specifically where drones are built with either in America or American made parts or allied parts, is like way behind China, like way behind, billions and billions of dollars behind, like 7+ years behind. And we're actively like Flock, what we're trying to do is we're building American drones. So like we're very much,
Are you actually building them locally?
oh yeah, we're building them out of a 100,000
Where?
square foot facility in Atlanta, Georgia.
Really?
Yeah, yeah,
Wow. Like,
yeah.
presumably only now, or have you always built them locally?
No, no, it's an initiative post acquisition. We were already like working on doing something post acquisition with American Made Drone Partners, and then, or sorry, pre acquisition, and then post acquisition, we decided we're going to build some of this stuff ourselves. So, we
That's so
raised
cool.
$275 million and have been chugging away at doing some of these things. But the one difference is like, as American made drone provider, we believe in building, but we don't believe in banning.
Hmm.
Uh, because we recognize that our public safety agencies are using like 90% of them are using foreign made drones because they're just way better right now and have had a head start. So we're not trying to ban to prevent our customers from, force our customers to buy our thing right now. We're just focused on building. Um, and we're not supportive of anything outside of that.
Yeah, I feel like, for us to build drones in America, we just need a ton of these industries to buy the drones, right? Like we need consumer drones, we need safety drones, we need all of these things that there's like enough of a demand for
We
it,
need
and then
buyers to be allowed to
yeah,
buy it, use it. Yeah.
yeah. That's cool. I guess, are you learning about manufacturing processes now? Like, are you deep in this?
Yeah, I'm pretty deep in it. I mean, it's all run under my org, and I will say, like, I've generally been a software CEO my entire
Yeah.
career, so getting into hardware was a bit of a learning curve. I've got a great team here that knows it way better than I probably ever will. And
Do you
my
think, on a per unit cost basis, let's just say like a comparable drone, Like, is it just always going to be cheaper from China, or do you think America, like, there's no reason American factories can't build like similarly priced drones?
No, I mean, I think it's a deep uphill battle to make them
Mm,
similarly priced. Right now, companies are just trying to reach parity on features and quality,
mm,
let alone pricing. Like pricing is a problem that we haven't even started with really. Um, Pricing is a function of like sourcing the components, the rare earth materials themselves, and the labor to put them all together. And like, let's say theoretically, I could snap my fingers and say, hey, we can just have automated factories to save so much money on labor. We still have to deal with like component pricing, rare earth pricing, where a lot of these rare earths are like built in either in like Chinese controlled environments, and it's just going to be a different pricing problem.
mm.
The import problem is going to be different. So like, there's going to be certain things that even if you solve for like the labor portion of actually manufacturing, that you have to deal with on the bomb, and that's
Yeah.
I expect like hopefully as world trade improves,
So I
that can.
guess like why even do it as a company? Like if you're saying like, hey, it's such an uphill battle. I mean, you've got these drones, you can use them. Like, why invest in this?
Number one, you get to control like when you actually control the hardware itself, you can make it do things that like you don't have to be reliant on foreign adversaries to like choose to do, right?
Hmm.
So like we're building a drone, for example, that is more of like an airship replacement in its own way. Like it's designed to stay up in the air for 3 hours and fly 100 miles per hour. And DJI, which is the largest company in the world for drones, it's Chinese. They don't have anything like that. And they probably won't build something like that, at least not for a long period of time,
Not
because
for
the unit
external
economics don't make
people.
that for that business. Yeah. So that's like number one. Number two, it's just there's a national security interest. There's certain things that we should just build, in the United States. That's one of them. I would say, because like you don't want to be reliant on foreign adversaries for things that are part of critical infrastructure generally, part of your public safety apparatus, your military apparatus, if you can avoid it. So like even if it's going to be expensive, it's something the U.S. government is likely to like want to support financially to ensure that we have the national security interests taken care of.
Yeah, and I guess for Flock, there's maybe some applications where you can actually sell to the DoD, and that might be hard if it's like a foreign drone.
Yeah, the DoD won't buy foreign, especially for foreign adversaries. Like they just won't do it. It's federally like not legal for them to do.
Nice. Cool, Rahul. This was a really fun podcast. I appreciate you kind of walking us through your journey and talking about all of these things. Thanks for joining us. Thanks everyone for listening. Please leave us a review on whatever channel you're listening on. Makes a big difference to the algorithm and to the success of the show. And see you all next week.